All right. We are live on Facebook on the Northville Studios, just so you're aware.
Yay! Hello, hello.
On and on.
Have to make sure we take a picture at the end.
Yes, we will do that.
Mm-hmm.
I'll get pictures of you guys while you're recording as well.
Fantastic.
Good. I have to figure out how to put them on the page because I haven't done any shows on the page yet.
All right, you ready?
Yep.
All right, here we go.
Welcome to Psyched by MG. This is Mary Grace Randazzo-Ratliff, or MG for short. I've been a psychotherapist in private practice for 32 years now. Guess what, everyone? We all have issues. So it's time to lighten up and move forward. Let's stop letting our crap control us and take control of our crap. Hello, everybody. Hello, hello. And today I'm so excited because I have two wonderful psychotherapists with me today. I have David Wright, known as the Motor City Hypnotist. I
call.
got it, Dave.
You got it
I
right.
got it.
Yes, you
my
did.
husband wrote something else in here, and it got me all confused. And Dave and I have known each other for years and years and years.
Oh, long time.
Oh, my God, like 30 years. And Dave, we are thrilled to have you with us today.
I'm thrilled to be here.
Can you tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Well, sure. Yeah, I'll go back to when we met. I actually met Mary Grace when I was in school, grad school.
Yeah.
We used to do a lot of. We tore up Ann Arbor more than a few nights.
we did.
We did. Yeah. So when I had to do my internship during my grad work, Mary Grace was out at Chelsea Hospital. They had an inpatient substance abuse facility there.
Yep.
So I thought, oh, okay, that sounds like a great place. So I did my internship where she worked.
Yep.
And we've been friends ever since.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, I've been in practice for 30 years. I'm a licensed professional counselor, psychotherapist, and I am the Motor City Hypnotist.
Right. And you have your own practice.
I do. My own practice located in Taylor.
Yep. In Taylor, Michigan. Mm-hmm. Well, welcome. I'm so excited to have you
Happy
here.
to be here.
And I also have to my right Matthew Burita, who is also a psychotherapist. He is in my practice with me.
I am.
And he's been in the field
8 years.
8 years now. Yeah, I was going to say it's close to 10
4 years before
Matthew.
that when I did my undergrad and worked in inpatient psychiatry. So.
Yes, and you have been an educator for several years as well. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so after my undergrad, as I was saying, so I ended up getting a job in inpatient, and it actually changed when I was in my undergrad. I was actually going to be a high school teacher. And then,
I didn't know that, Matthew.
Yeah, so I was, and then all of a sudden I did all my student teaching hours, and then I said, I'm dropping out of the College of Ed. And it made my parents really happy. I'm being facetious. So I dropped out of the College of Ed, bumped my psych minor to a major, and then that started my journey. So after my undergrad, I was like, this is something that I'm really passionate about, compassionate, and, having the empathy and all those things that are obviously, we know and exist in this realm. So then I went on to be into a psychologist program. And then after graduating, I had the honor of meeting you.
Yes, you did.
So I remember one of my colleagues had actually introduced and said, there's an open office to start, your practice.
Downtown Plymouth.
I'm walking down in downtown Plymouth, and I'm actually like, wait a minute, does that look like my cousin? Because you guys had the same haircut, the same everything. And so I was like, okay.
You thought I was your cousin.
I did. And I was like, right from there, I was like, nope, there's no problem. You tried to show me the office. I was like, I'm good. That's fine. So
you signed right away.
I signed right away. And equally since then, too, I've been most recently joining your practice, and then still have been an educator for the last 8 years as well.
Yeah, you've been an educator with
Washtenaw, yep.
Washtenaw Community College,
Yep,
correct?
working there
and
doing online classes, so distance learning, and then teaching live classes, so intro to psych and, kind of from the grassroots, and then...
Wow, you really did bring those two worlds together.
I did, yeah. So it's funny how that came kind of full circle, and I remember telling myself, if I ever teach again, I'm going to do it in a college, kind of format, a college, environment, and it happened.
Oh my gosh, Matthew. I'm so glad to know this. I did not know this about you. And, just to say, when we first met, and it's the same thing with you, Dave, the three of us, when I first met Matthew, we hit it off. It was one of those things where you feel like you've known each other forever.
Mm-hmm.
We were like that too, Dave.
Yes.
And all of our personalities, we could be obnoxious, but we're very direct. Like, we're very straightforward. We, come from a very good, kind place, but we don't mess with shit. Like, we tell it like it is. No pulling punches. And
welcome
Matthew,
to Psyched by MG. This is Mary Grace Randazzo Ratliff, or MG for short.
What was it?
I've been a psychotherapist in
Wi-Fi,
private practice for 32 years
well,
now.
when the people came in,
Guess what,
to
everyone?
The Wi-Fi,
We all have
or
issues.
hook up the Wi-Fi,
So it's
they
time
cut
to
up my
lighten
phone
up and
line.
move.
And so we had to literally sit on the phone together with the guy from AT&T for like 3.5 to 4 hours, and we laughed the entire time. What are you going to do? Either you're going to get bummed out or you're going to freaking laugh your ass off. So, and that was Matthew and I just having so much fun. He kept saying, "I'm so sorry." And I'm like, "Oh, I'm having a great old time." It's totally cool. And Dave, you and I, the same thing.
Oh,
I mean, we took it beyond Chelsea Harbor.
Oh, we did. Oh, yeah. Once Chelsea was done, we just kept going.
Kept going.
Yeah.
Truly. But and I think that's also what's bringing the three of us together here in this podcast. And so today on this podcast, we are going to talk about transitions, and we're going to take a look at them. We're going to define them. We're going to, talk about what we each go through with them. But before that, there has been something in the news that kind of hit me, and it's going to hit you too a bit, Dave. It was that whole college scandal with, those actors out in California and paying their way into the colleges. And this one woman that she came from the Hot Pocket fortune. Her father or her grandfather created the Hot Pockets, and she just got her sentence handed down. And I was sitting there like, I get the whole thing with you want the best for your kids, but losing the whole model for your children, integrity, honesty, the right way, the wrong way, when you cross that over and put it in the guise of I'm doing something for my child, I think you're getting delusional at that point.
It's a good question, and let me reframe this because we look at it from the outside and think, well, how can somebody do something that's so, dishonest or unethical? And honestly, I can't say that if I didn't have $10 million in my bank account,
Would you do it? That's a great question.
Know. I can't say that I would or wouldn't, but that would definitely change you have options. You have more options then, whether they're right or wrong. I'm not condoning or criticizing that, but it is an interesting debate that if you want the best for your kids and you have the money to do it, what's the line, I guess, and maybe that's hard to define.
How challenging the line becomes then.
And who's in charge of moving it?
Yeah, I think that's such a big. It then expands to a bigger issue, like what money does to people, as far as losing their integrity, their morals, the difference between what right and wrong. When you end up getting so, coddled, spoiled, catered to, it kind of creates this kind of narcissistic world that people can cocoon themselves in, I think.
Well, you're used to getting something or getting anything really that you want in life.
Right. You become entitled to it.
And even as a parent, when you've given your kids, and again, I'm not judging as far as not giving your kids what you can. I want the best for my child.
Yeah.
But when you're giving your kids everything they've wanted their whole life, and then they get to the college, and you say, "Well, I can't do it this time." I think they've already built in this pattern of doing whatever they can to make it happen.
It's really messing them up, I think.
Well, I think that's important too, though. Like giving your kids everything they wanted. And then, like you said, this line of entitlement.
Yeah.
So, and that's something I talk about with different environments, working with, patients even. Is like, it sounds like there's some entitlement coming through here. So even
exactly
what you're saying is like this is a much broader issue, I think.
It is, because, and I just actually thought of that when you talked about money, that this actually moves into, when you are wealthy like that, and how we're watching people just cross over lines of integrity and believing that they're entitled to that and they have the right to that. And now, I mean, these kids are facing, I think it was a good thing that happened. It's kind of like the alcoholic who hits that bottom and it changes their life because it gives them a reality check again. It feels like, the super wealthy can go into a delusional world and they need reality checks that kind of bring them back a little bit.
And if reality is not hitting you the first time, so I always use this kind of terminology where it's like, first of all, it's a little pixie dust. Then there might be some pebbles. And then after the pebbles, there's actual like big rocks or bulldozers or roadblocks. And then after that, the whole building comes crashing down on your ass.
That's right.
So those are life's lessons. And she's trying to kick us in our ass when we're trying to learn these things.
And the way you describe that, Matt, it's that gradual breakdown of boundaries.
Yeah.
I mean,
that's a very good point.
Yeah, I mean, maybe when these kids were 10, you might have done something a little bit unethical to who knows? I mean, but again, it just gets easier the more you get away with it.
Yeah.
And I'm sure, again, like any other person in a situation like that, I'm sure at one point in their life they didn't say, "Hey, I'm gonna wait till my kids get to college and I'm gonna buy their way in." I mean, I'm sure there was nothing that was planned that much ahead. It's just they're kind of a victim of their own circumstances.
Yeah, a victim, and I challenge that a little bit because they do know the difference between right and wrong. I'm feeling like today, like that line has gotten so blurred. I say this often to clients. I say, you never understand bad behavior. Because if you understand it, you can't protect yourself from it. Because it leads to that rationalization thing that we see so often, whether it's something like this, where they rationalize why they should do it, and they turn it into making sense to the point where it's delusional. And we see it with alcoholism, drug addiction. We see it with people who have any kind of addiction issue. And I always call it a disease of rationalizations. And these rationalizations get you to cross a line. Then you start to get in trouble. And as you're doing the wrong behaviors and getting into trouble, you're trying to make sense of all that.
And you're also sometimes hoping that you don't get caught.
Yes.
And that's where that living in constant fear, and you're kind of covered with this sphere of like living in fear and trauma.
Yes.
And you start to then sometimes overreact.
Exactly.
And start to act out even more. And then that's when people will say, like even patients, they'll say, I don't know why I'm acting out more. And I know that this is wrong now.
Yeah. And it takes over your brain. Like it really gets out of control.
Well, in the other danger, going the opposite way, is that they become immune to it and then feel invincible. And that's when people become reckless.
Oh, very much
and
so. Yeah.
They haven't been stopped yet, so I'm going to continue doing wrong. And again, it's not, I don't think it's this conscious thought out choice, but it's behaviors.
Yes.
You get away with something for so long, you feel like, oh, there's no consequences to this.
Exactly.
Until there is.
Exactly. That the more there isn't a consequence for that bad behavior, it feeds like this delusional world. And you can get away with it and you can stretch it more, which feeds the rationalizations even more. And so you get into that cycle.
Well, and it cycles because it's not rooted in reality.
No.
Right?
No,
so
that's right.
When
that's
people
right.
are constantly believing something, and it doesn't have to be rooted in reality. And that's why, like, when you're not rationalizing the bad behavior, it's good for people who don't understand. And when people say, I don't understand how you can do that, that's a good thing.
Right.
That's actually called empathy. That's called a moral compass.
Yeah, exactly. Well, this article really got me. I mean, and you're seeing these moms, and it's very focused on the moms. I don't know if you've noticed that. A lot of these cases are the dads are kind of quiet in the whole thing, but wouldn't you think it would be both? I know there's the whole celebrity, like this particular woman is from Hot Pockets, and then Felicity, she's a well-known actress.
Right, and I think Lori Loughlin was the other one.
Lori Loughlin was the other one, so maybe that's the whole,
well, because they're the ones who are kind of in charge of the money, so to speak. I don't know.
Maybe that's it.
I hate to say in charge, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, because I thought, geez, where are the dads in all this thing? They're making the decisions with them.
Well, that's interesting because that's, and again, I'm making a very general statement here. I'm not. I never make a blanket statement that's 100%. But this is where most dads or males are.
Yeah.
They avoid the conflict. They sit back and they just don't want to have any part of it.
Yep. And I think
they let the female or the mother just take control and handle it.
Yep.
Well, and it's not that men can't.
Right.
That's the thing here. And I think that's what you're getting at too, is that when you think about it, it's this idea that men don't have the capacity. That's a bunch of baloney.
I know.
Men have just as much capacity as women.
They really do. And that's a compliment to men. That's talking about their emotional intelligence.
Of course, it depends on who you ask. If you ask their wives, they might argue that. But
and they would, and that's not fair. Because, so many sessions that I've had.
I mean, when you're saying that's not fair, I mean, you need to say that again because it's really not.
It's really not fair. And I've done couples therapy for, so many years. And I'm not going to state it anymore because it's telling everyone how old I am. But where I sit in those sessions and I notice that when I give the male the room and the space and the quiet to kind of think about something that I'm talking about, and I say to that woman, just pause for a moment, just pause. They come up with great analysis. I mean, they got it. They really do. And I teach women all the time. I said, your estrogen and your progesterone, when you are in stress or in distress, it takes you to the word center of your brain. And so when there's a conflict, we are all words. And I created that app, back in 2015, I think it was. And that said, women are emotionally very articulate. But for men, their testosterone keeps them in that physical body. And so when we throw the machine gun of words, and I use this all the time, the machine gun of words at men when we're upset, you guys feel that.
Or we just go,
well, and I think
check
that's
out.
Because I think you're feeling all women. I don't think we feel all those words. You get two women in a room and we just want to fucking give our point. Like we're just going to fight you. We're going to think about every angle. We're in there. But with men, I think because of that testosterone, they feel it. And when they do, it is so overwhelming because that energy is overwhelming. Now, to flip on the women's side of it, for women, they ramp up because they're needing to be validated, not about the man's opinion of what they're talking about, but their experience is a hard experience, and it's been tough and difficult. And when you validate a woman, she slows down the words. She starts to breathe. And I think the beautiful gift of that dynamic in the femininity and the masculinity is that it complements one another. So, and I tell women, when you have some point to prove, first of all, sit down. And I used to, with my husband, he used to get a piece of paper. And I Italian New Yorker. He is the most passive, quiet man. And he would tell me, I need you to shut up. Like, don't talk and let me just write a few notes because you're going so fast. I don't know what the hell you're talking about.
I have my paper going.
Exactly. And so, so I thought, okay. And I talked about this on another podcast. I picked the lint off my pants just to keep my mouth from going. Well, he gave me this wonderful analysis of this fight we were having. And I was blown away. like, he's like, I'm not dumb. I can't handle all the intensity. Like, and that doesn't mean I don't care. I care about what you're saying, but it's coming and it's so intense. And I was so proud of him. And I said, just keep cueing me about that. Because now that I know you care enough and you can absorb it and you listen and you gave me this great analysis, I can slow down a little bit. It's very physical for me to be that wound up, but I will pick the lint. I'll draw little circles on a piece. I'll do whatever I got to frickin' do so long as you keep joining me in that emotional intelligence that I know men have. Mm-hmm. And so I went on to teach that to a lot of clients. And so many women were just awestruck when they just started to change all that intensity. And I said, for the man's part, you have to realize you have to validate her. You have to join her with some words to say, I'm connected to you, I care, and I believe you, I validate you. And she'll come down. So
I think the danger is, and I've seen this a lot, again, in couples where the woman is so strong that the man just retreats. And they just...
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
They just... get into their own little cocoon and they disappear. They actually disappear. I mean,
they do.
You got men that come home, and again, we're talking about adult men here, come home, go to the basement and play video games for 6 hours because they don't want to deal with the issues. And here's the thing I've projected or tried to emphasize to men is that women, they don't want you to agree with them. They don't want you to. But they just want you to have some investment.
Yes, connect and validate.
Just
connect and validate because they're shaking inside. Mm-hmm. They're feeling insecure because there's been a conflict. Mm-hmm. And for women, I say, when a man is in that place, slow down, grab their hand, like just rub their skin. And I'm not talking about a sexual thing here. I'm talking about they've had a bad day, and just breathe. Because the beautiful part that you guys bring is that physical connection. And women, when they're in their heads, it's like, don't frickin' touch me, man. I'll frickin' blow you apart. Right?
Step back.
But for women, what the gift of the male is that physical, first of all, is not all sexuals. They want to give you a hug because they want to connect. They want to connect. That is their words, is to show you that. And so when a man is going through something hard, slow down the words, do the pauses, sit down, check in, and hold his hand or rub on his arm and do the same thing. I'm sorry you're going through this. This is really, it sounds like a bad day. Sounds like that guy was an asshole. I'm so sorry that this is happening to you. And you'll find that then you aren't going to fight each other.
Well, I think it's interesting, too, though, is like what we're talking about is actually being patient.
Yeah.
And oftentimes when I'm working with, whether it's couples or individuals, but specifically working with men, and my approach, it definitely yields a different response sometimes.
Yeah.
And I've even talked to men, and watching the rate and the pitch and the tone and the volume, and and I ask them, and after I'll intentionally go into like a monologue, relating and anchoring it into their history and into their life.
Yeah.
And the pain and the trauma that maybe they've gone through.
Yeah.
And then I'll stop and I'll ask them, who are you hearing right now?
Yeah.
Are you hearing a man or are you hearing a woman?
Yeah.
And most oftentimes they'll say that they hear a woman.
Yeah.
And then I process that and they're like, why did you ask me that? Like, why, are you, and then they're worrying, of course, then they start to worry, I'm, offending me. And I'm like, this is non, it's gender neutral.
That's right.
But what is it about my voice that is comforting you?
That's right.
And so I think that's interesting because, and I just had a conversation with a colleague where I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry that this happened to you. And he was describing something that was going on in his life. And he was like, oh gosh, don't talk to me about that. Or don't. And I was like, well, all I'm doing is being compassionate. I'm being empathetic, and I'm trying to provide comfort,
That's
right?
a whole other great podcast. Oh my God.
Start writing these down, Mary Grace.
I can't because I'm talking and using my hands at the same time. Damn it.
But I think it's interesting where it's like, and then later he came back and he had actually said, I hope you didn't take offense to that. And I said, I didn't take offense.
No.
I'm just worried. And I'm wondering what was so off-putting that someone cared about you.
Yeah.
Like
what was so scary?
Right.
Yeah.
What was so scary about that?
Yeah. And this leads us perfectly because today we wanted to talk about transitions. And, transitions being engagements, transitions being marriage, moving, new jobs, having a baby, kids going off to college like Dave and I are going through.
Or will be soon.
Yes. And how much they affect people. And I think all of us have been through this in our practice where we have to almost convince the client of how stressful it is. It can be exciting and very, very stressful. And so, because I think people think that if it's a good thing, then I should just be excited and not be moody or stressed out or have sleep problems or, be snippy to people. And in reality, no, it's all of that because it's change. And as we look at transitions, it's definitely an opportunity for growth because a lot of times transitions can be a really good thing. Some of them are hard, like a death. But there's a whole bunch of stress that goes with transitions. And I'm kind of looking at Dave right now, Matthew, because, of course, at the top of my head is my daughter went off to college last year. Now she's a sophomore.
Right.
And I don't know what la-la land I lived in, but I had no idea emotionally how intense that was. And it gave me such a good reminder of the stress of transitions. And now Dave's son is going.
He's a senior this year in high school.
September, they do the big, and you go automatically into empty nest, right?
Well, we'll see. It's still up in the air if he's going to live on. He's going to Wayne State.
So he might.
So he might commute. Again, that's all based on financial decisions and what he wants to do. But either way, it's going to be a transition because. It's just a different level of education,
whole different
and
thing.
It's a different, it just changes. And when and when your kids change, you're going through transition.
Oh God.
Well, it's interesting too, though, because when your daughter was going off to college, and like you just said, convincing the clients, I'm having to have conversations with Mary Grace, I'm like, Mary Grace, your daughter is gone,
right?
She's moving, and.
Sometimes I wanted to smack the shit out of him, tell him to shut the fuck up. Like, you're stressing me out, dude. You're stressing me out. But it was, then finally I crash landed, of course, and went, holy shit. It got to the point, and I think, Matthew, I was telling him, it got to the point after she moved, my bathroom wall and her bathroom wall are the same to her room. And one night I had put my hand, this could make me weep, on the wall.
Oh, boy.
And I started crying, and I'm like, oh, my God, she's not in there anymore. She is not in there. She's not in there. I don't have control over her world anymore. I want her safe. If some freaking biatch of a guy makes some wrong move, I'm going to have to kill somebody. I'm going to have to kick somebody's ass. Oh, my God. She better tell me if some biatch, does something wrong. The stuff that I thought of, and it was twofold. Because it reminded me of when I went out into the world alone, because it can trigger the past experience as well as the present experience. Now, my daughter has, these two parents. We have great communication. We're a close family. We're there for her. And we know we need to let go. And we're a talky family, of course.
No way.
Shut up, Dave.
Never.
No way.
Shut up, Dave.
Never.
And so, but my upbringing was different. I'm a product of the 70s, and my parents were divorced, and I went off by myself. I handled everything alone. My parents were not educated. And so I had to, you too, Dave, you're nodding, right?
My parents were divorced when I was 8. I was the first person in my entire family to do anything after high school.
See, me too.
So
I was the one.
In fact, and again, to the point where I went to school not knowing I had to buy books.
Yeah.
Till I got there.
I was the same way.
I had no idea.
You didn't know how
anything
anything worked. No one walked you through it. None of those things.
You just get pushed
You're
out
alone.
into sea, and you have to make it.
Seriously, the scenario of you throw a person in the middle of the ocean to teach them to swim.
Yep.
And So and I know your upbringing was the same. Like you become
I think that's an interesting paradigm shift, is that even if you have parents who are there physically, but not involved and invested in a way that you actually ask your kid.
Yes.
Like communicate with your kid and emote to the kid. So even though I was, crying out and screaming out to have that connection and help me in a way that I wanted to help, and then not getting it, that level of rejection that you feel.
Rejection.
Yeah.
And all of that with transitions, and this is, I think, what's so personal, like, and so important to hear, that stuff gets kicked up at the same time. Like, it's the transition about what's going on in the present, which is stressful. And if you come from that kind of background, that shit comes up. And it's supposed to. I mean, you have a lot of opportunities to really learn from that. And the day that she moved, oh my freaking God, I was such a mess. I was a little biatch. I really was. My poor husband, I don't know how and I told him, I said, listen, everything's going to bug me today. Like everything. And he's like, I know, honey. 'Cause he's a quiet type, really quiet, very passive. You know my husband.
Oh, yeah.
You guys. And so I said, listen, you know me. Like everything's good. And don't let me drive. I'm not driving there because you know how I get. Everyone who drives with me knows. But I was between laughing because I'd become a smartass and want everybody in the car to laugh, and then I'd cry. And then I would say, wow, I'm okay. I can do this. And then 20 minutes later, I'd be like, oh, my God, I've got to move in with her. Like, I just have to, because I have to make sure no schmuck, like, touches her and hurts her. I was everywhere. And then after we let her go and move into that apartment, and I went home, I did not realize, and this is the part that Matthew put, it was months of dealing with that transition. Like, holy crap, when we go to dinner, little things. The hostess would say, how many? I'd say 4. And my husband go, 3. Behind my back, you go 3. And I'm like, oh my God, this is killing me. Sometimes I feel like an open wound. But I think that's reality with transitions, whether it's the kid moving out of the house and life changing. And in that, just if I can go back there for a second, you have to figure out the difference between they're not dead. They didn't freaking die, people. It's a transition, not a death.
It's change.
It's change.
Change is difficult. In general, people don't like change. It's not a comfortable thing, even though it can be good.
That's right.
You brought up great.
That's
your daughter going to college. She's improving herself. She's going to get a career.
Freaking
It's a
doing
great
awesome.
thing.
And there's a wonderful part of all that. I'm watching this woman, she's got an activist side, and she's a strong feminist, and she's very political. And I'm watching that. I'm so proud of it and so excited about it. We have the greatest conversations together. And then she'll say, okay, Mom, I'll see ya. And I'll see that darn little munchkin walking away, and I'll start crying thinking, damn. And when you're in that, of course, you want it to hurry up because you can't sleep and they freaking driving you nuts because of the temper tantrums. But it's just such a mixed bag. It's really tough. And that is so important to understand, whether the kid's moving to college or say you get a new job. Matthew Burita.
Yes.
Oh, my God. This man had so many changes this year.
Many
new jobs. He got a lot of promotions. And
it's tough because you start to – it's interesting because early on a prof said to me one time, like your professional identity. And I thought that it didn't resonate with me as much as – like you guys were talking about in the early years, right? The kind of Chelsea and the grassroots of your hard work and the fruits of your labor. And so when I'm going through these transitions, right?
Yeah.
One, the past, what's brought up in the past of like, am I worthy enough of this? Should I be able to? Should I even be, applying for these And it's like, well, wait a minute.
What the
You've
hell's
worked
that?
so hard,
Yes.
but yet now I'm questioning myself, and I'm
Exactly.
and I have to like kick myself in the ass because I'm like, well, wait. And I keep on telling myself, I'm like, okay, Matt, if you take 4 steps forward but 1 step back, you're still 3 forward.
That's right.
So I'm like,
exactly.
I'm still making some progress.
That's right.
And I think that's the
you're
thing.
bringing up that self-doubt, like when it's a new job, when it's an engagement, when it's, the
People
thing,
don't want to give you room to breathe in it.
well, I know, exactly. And the self-doubt that can creep in that people will say to themselves. And I think it's so important to, number one, ramp it up so you can hear it, so that you can address it and really have a talking to with yourself and say, stop the negativity. No one's going to die here if I take the job, or no one, even if I make a mistake, no one's dying here, people. It's okay. Because that self-doubt can turn into a shame. We call them shame spirals, where you can beat yourself up and you can create anxiety so that when you go into that job the first day, you're so freaking nervous that you're not feeling the excitement side of things.
Or even if you've been doing the job like we have for close to 30 years.
Yeah.
And tell me if this happens to you. Every once in a while, I'll sit down with a client, and then 20 minutes later, I'm like, what the hell is going on here? I don't know what the hell I'm doing right now. It's just sometimes it's just
and
you're just not making a connection right away, or it's just something.
And that is so important because you and I, Dave, and you too, Matthew. That is so powerful. When we're in sessions and we say, "Holy crap, you've been through some shit."
And you
I
think
am
after
so
30 years you've
impressed.
heard it all, but then
then you get the zinger. I know
something will come up. You'll be
and
like,
our hearts break. It's like, oh my! I want you to know how amazing you are because can you hear all the stuff you've been through? It's going to take us some time to really work with it and to know where we're going, but I just acknowledge that. And I think that's the other thing to be important. Watch bad self-talk, but to really acknowledge your strengths when you're feeling the anxiety.
It's funny you mentioned watching the bad self-talk. If I'm going to share, so Mary Grace and I were talking, and we're going on vacation, right? So it's like, and I'm like, I can't talk bad about, like, I have to be good to myself.
Yes.
And that's what you were like literally giving me permission. And I needed that space to exist, to be vulnerable, and not isolate. And like you said, ramp it up and talk about it and almost fight fair with yourself.
That's right.
So you have somebody there who's not going to ridicule you or be that harsh critical voice, but say you need to be okay with yourself.
Yes.
You need to love your body, like your body, and go through that. And that was like, that's a huge transition.
You are so susceptible when you're going through a transition to be mean. And we were talking about this trip and going on vacation, and I've put on like 16, 17 pounds. And I know the worst thing you can do when you gain weight is to really beat the hell out of yourself. Because then you're all stressed out, you feel bad, and when you feel bad, you want to eat. There's a cycle, a pattern. And so I have done this thing with myself where I say, you're absolutely stunning. You are beautiful, just the way you are. And I told Matthew, I said, I am just going to do a little shopping. And I'm going to go out and buy some things that I look forward to putting on so that I keep fighting that negative, harsh, abusive. If I ever heard someone talking to someone else the way that I can talk to myself on that issue,
there it is.
I would jump over the frickin' table and grab them by the scruff of the neck.
Would we let anybody talk to one of the patients? Like
Never.
If a patient was in our office and saying that their family or friend or partner was talking to them like that, you would literally, without skipping a beat, point out to them, are you aware of what's in some way or fashion, point out to them how destructive that can be.
And it's horrible. It's horrible. And so that, we always, as therapists, talk about be the good parent to yourself. Be the good parent to yourself. And that's kind of what led to this podcast. I want us to all fall in love with our shit. Like, fall in love. And it's funny as hell. We do some really funny shit when we're upset and we're screwing up.
Or even if we're not.
Yeah, true. That's true, Dave.
We just do funny shit for the fun of it.
Exactly. So, and the other thing I think that we're hitting on with transitions that I think is so important, if you want a transition to go well, don't isolate with the stress. You got to get together with your buddy and hang out and go do dinner with a friend. And if you're in a support group, go to a support group. You got to tell your therapist that it's going on. And we all know that isolation is at the heart of people's mental health or mental illness. If it's going to hit and cause a problem, you're going to find that person's isolated.
Most people come in for whatever it is. I mean, you could go down my list: depression, anxiety, fears, whatever it is. They almost always isolate. They almost always withdraw, and they don't want to interact, and they don't want to be out, and they don't want to be social.
You got to make it. That I hate to steal a thing from Nike, but I say it all the time to clients. Fake it till you make it. Like, you got to make yourself get out there. You got to make yourself talk. And if it's hard, start talking by saying, I am such a nervous wreck to talk about this. And that person who's sitting across the table will probably lean forward and say, hey, it's okay.
I think it's being comfortable with silence too. So like, I'll tell clients, I'm like, you need to take the cotton out of your ears and put it in your mouth, and you need to perfect your silence.
That's awesome.
And get
when you're supporting. Right.
And so when you're there and recognizing and working in residential treatment, working in talking about the incarceral population, it's like at the heart of a lot of the pain and a lot of the mental health concerns and all these things that jump out, and people, it's the isolation, not being able to feel, because then it goes into the feeling. I don't feel like anybody cares about me. I don't feel like anybody is there to listen or there to talk to. And sometimes it's not even talking. It's just, we don't have to talk. I'll sit here. This is and I've said to clients before, this is your time. This is for you.
What do you need?
What do you want and what do you need?
Yeah.
And and it's amazing how they actually sometimes can realize that in that real time, how uncomfortable it might feel. And then you see it. The light bulb goes off, and they're like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I need to talk.
Yes.
I need to change. But the change is hard because then you're telling yourself that I have to accept an alternative.
Yes.
And if you're not getting to that alternative, then that's where there's some fear still.
Yeah.
Then that shame spiraling, like you said.
Yeah. So I think the key, don't isolate. Connect with other people. If you feel like you don't have anyone to talk to, join a group, join a support group. Meetups are great. If you don't think you're ready to talk about some major issue and you need to start with just connecting, join a meetup. Find an interest you like. And just work on developing relationships.
And that's a great thing, because nowadays with technology, Facebook has a group for everything. Whatever your interest is.
Everything.
If it's video games, if it's riding donkeys, it doesn't matter. There's a group for everybody. There is.
I was like, that's so random, but I like it.
But I bet you there's a group for that.
There probably is.
We're totally looking it up after the podcast.
Donkey riding.
Exactly.
That's what we're looking for.
Exactly. So not isolating, connecting, talking, recognizing that it's hard and that it isn't all exciting, wonderful stuff.
And giving yourself permission
yes,
to not sometimes even say I'm not okay, but I know I'm going to be.
Right.
And
telling someone I just need to vent.
Yeah.
I don't need you to fix it. I just need to vent.
Right.
Because sometimes, and for the listener too, sometimes you have to ask, do you want input, or are you just needing to talk right now? Is good support. So there's some tidbits about transitioning.
Let me add one more thing about transition, because when we talked about pre-show about this, and I've told this, I've used this. I don't know if you call it an analogy. If it's not, you can have the grammar police arrest me. But just think about it. Like when I was a parent when we had a baby.
Yeah.
They don't give you an instruction booklet.
No.
So we bring this thing home. You don't know what to do. And you're thinking at that point, as soon as that, I don't know, it'll just get better.
Yeah.
And you're just waiting for that next stage. So the next stage comes, and they do get bigger. But then my son, he didn't sleep for forever.
Yeah.
I think he stayed up for 6 months straight.
Yeah.
But
I know.
And I thought, okay, once this stage is done, it'll get better.
Right.
Then he started teething.
I know.
And that went on. Then you're like, once this stage, it'll get better.
So
then
the
he had colic.
freaking thing is that gets better, but then it goes to the next thing.
I think you're always in some type of transition.
Yes.
And that's
Very
called life.
good point, Dave. Very good point.
And we're talking about, again, there are big events that cause transition, but I think we're always developing and transitioning into something.
Yes.
And I think that's the key thing to look at, is that if you have a healthy self-esteem and a healthy set of values
and connection to others,
that's
can
the
get
whole
back
key.
there.
Yes. It's as you mature, it's all about mastering that. Mastering, connecting with others, talking about it, dealing with the stress, not denying the stress, or thinking that something's wrong because there's stress. I think you move from being young or more immature to being more mature and wiser. And so you get so masterful at transitions that you just don't get as shaken up. And if you do, it's no big deal, because you know exactly what to do to make yourself feel better.
And there's an after.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is the comfort.
So that being said, we have this saying that, I say, don't let your crap control you. You take control of your crap. I thought we could, before we close, share something that we each took control over this past week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks that got better. I kind of slipped in mine already a little bit. And that was, we were talking about going, to the hot weather and me gaining weight, and that, God, I could slowly hear the crappy shit that I could say and the meanness and all of that. And then I have to add in here that I watched that show, My 600-Pound Life. And I said to myself, you are so full of shit right now, Mary Grace. Really, you're talking about what, 20 pounds at the most? But so I had decided, okay, enough. Every time you cross a mirror, every time you get that thought, this is what you're going to do. This is what you're going to say. And that's what I did this last week, actually, few weeks now, where I took control of my crap. What did you guys do? Do you have anything?
Do you want to go first?
I'll go first.
Okay. Oh, David.
I'll do anything once. So, I think this is taking control of it, because again, like you said, and again, this typically is, there's this misconception out there that women are the only one that worry about their weight and how what shape they're in, but men have this thing too. So you met me when I was a skinny punk. I think I was I was 160 pounds when I met you.
You were you were too thin.
I was a skinny punk.
You were very skinny.
I was. So, and
he had a ponytail.
Yeah, I did have long hair. I was a hippie, which was cool.
You were.
I was cool. I was cool. I had an earring.
Yeah, you did. You
got a tattoo.
You were rocking it, dude.
Yeah,
you were. I didn't know about the tattoo.
Oh, yeah. You saw it. It's not anywhere, It's on my arm, so you're good. Yeah. So I've been thinking just recently, I had a good friend of mine that I've known for years. He called me up and he says, "Oh, I've been in the hospital for a week. I had a heart attack." And I'm like, "Oh my gosh!" And he's 46.
Oh my God!
So he's not much younger than me.
Yeah.
But I'm like, "Oh my God!" I'm like, and he said, "Yeah, just lifestyle and not taking care of myself and eating." Yeah. So I've had this kind of, and it's more of a transition in my mindset that, I want to do the things I used to do that I enjoyed. Like I used to play hockey, and I haven't done that for 15 years.
Wow.
So I'm thinking of these things, and I'm starting to commit to getting back into some things.
Back into it because your kid is older now.
Right.
Yeah, it kind of goes by the wayside when the kids.
So I'm transitioning back into
Good
just
for
kind of
you.
taking care of myself physically more.
You turned that into good shit.
I did.
You did.
Yes.
All right, Matthew.
Well, so like you, I've kind of talked about it a little bit, but this has been more of an evolution. And I would say over the past 4 years or so, but especially like we were talking about in the last year, all the transitions.
Oh,
and specifically in my life, I've always allowed, and that's the hardest part, is that I've allowed, and I learned that I allowed all this crap to take control of me. And I would allow the trauma and just the past experiences of things not working out to control me. And so specifically with my life and my personal life, which I'm recently engaged.
Yay!
Well, congratulations.
I'm so excited.
So, and that being said, it's like I got to this point where I recognized I wasn't the trauma.
That's right.
And I wasn't the answer to the question mark of why things went wrong in my life.
Yeah.
And so, but I used to allow that crap to control me. And I used to allow it to, and I used to just, I would just spiral, and I would, kind of create my own chaos because, again, in our own kind of mental health, regime, thinking that you're not good enough or you're not. And so for me, and I know it sounds cliche, but I'm actually allowing myself to think I'm good enough.
Yes.
And my good is good enough.
Yes.
And so that's kind of like
You're
that
awesome.
Journey is like where I'm at. Like
that's
kind
right.
And it started before, the recent engagement, but I think that allowed me to get to the point where I actually believed that it was okay. And things might happen, but it's okay. And that's always been something I struggled with because I allowed it to control me. And now I'm controlling that.
Oh, so good, you guys. So good. So if I had a wish for everyone out there, I think I would wish that if there's one thing that they take away from this today is to really deal with the shitty talk that people can do when they start to feel nervous or they start to feel they've made a mistake or they're in stress of transition, that they will really stop and turn it around and say what they would say to their spouse or their best friend and be nicer. And you will see, you will get control over that crap if you do that. It really will happen. And then the other part of it is you got to connect with other people. And you know what? If they're sitting in front of you and they're being an asshole, like they're turning it into, oh, you're whining, oh, you're this, you know what? In your head, tell them to shut the fuck up. And it's really, it identifies who they are, not who you are.
Absolutely.
And so long as you are wanting to move forward and be responsible to move yourself forward and not just, because some people do just bitch and then don't do anything. But if you're one of those people and you want the change and somebody is making you feel bad, you know what? You tuck that in your head and you say to yourself, this isn't about me. This is about them, and I got to move on as far as being emotionally connected to someone and vulnerable. I got to find the right person who's just going to support me and say, I'm here, and oh, yeah, I get it. It does suck when you go through that. So that's what I hope that the listener will take today. And that being said, Matt, we got two Matts here today. Actually, we got Matt in the booth.
Go lighten up and move.
We're gonna wrap this up, and I want to thank David Wright, and I want to thank Matthew Burita, and I'm hoping that this little trio continues.
Absolutely.
For being here today, and then you can connect with Psyched by MG on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram. And I have an office in downtown Plymouth. And other than that, I hope we got you psyched today. Take care now. Oh my God, you guys were amazing. You guys, that went so well. Dude.
I told you.